Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today on Lost Film File, I'm going to talk about Ralph Bakshi's The Cigarette and the Weed from 1981. This was actually suggested over a year ago in the comments for a previous Lost Film File by Under the Bed. He actually calls it The Cigarette, Butt, and the Weed, but he wasn't sure what the title was. So I was fascinated by it from that comment, and that has led me to make this video, so I do actually listen to comments. And that was a comment on Him, the Lost Gay Jesus porno movie, which is a real movie, and I go into that, and you can watch that video if you would like to. Cigarette and the Weed is kind of insanely elusive. Very few people have seen it. It has played at some film festivals, and John Kay has seen it, but other than that, we know absolutely nothing. And until very recently, we thought it was completely lost, other than maybe Ralph Bakshi or his family have it or something, but we had never seen really any of it publicly outside of a few screenings. Now, what is The Cigarette and the Weed? The Cigarette and the Weed is a story about a weed growing on a street corner, and then a discarded cigarette butt rolls up to the weed to converse before the cigarette butt rolls into a puddle and extinguishes itself. And we know it is 3 minutes, we know it came out, or I guess didn't come out, but it's dated 1981, and that's literally all we know. And it doesn't seem like there was dialogue in it, and no one else is listed as working on it other than Ralph Bakshi. I assume someone else did something on it, but all I can find through anything is just Ralph Bakshi's name over and over again. But we also know that this was apparently an attempt by Ralph Bakshi to bring back animated shorts before features, as he had 3 films come out in the early 80s. In 1981, American Pop. In 1982, Hey Good Looking finally came out. And then in 1983, Fire and Ice. Whether this film was supposed to play before any of them, that's a theory I have, that maybe he thought, oh, I could just put this on the print right before the movie starts. They do that often with trailers even today. That could have been an idea. Or he was just like, we're just going to have random shorts happen before movies. Now, that theory, what's interesting is I can't find any interview of Ralph Bakshi talking about this film, and I can't find much on it at all. The most verified source is from John Kay, who's troubling for a lot of reasons and is definitely a horrible person. But in this interview, it's one of the few times I've gotten anyone in the industry to actually talk about The Cigarette and the Weed. So we're gonna actually listen to what John Kay has to say in this part. It was basically the first time he met Ralph Bakshi, and he was sent back to watch The Cigarette and the Weed, and he even states the theory it was supposed to play in theaters much like animated shorts used to. And he stated that it was really awful, and he actually told Ralph Bakshi, because Ralph Bakshi was sort of part of the job interview, I guess, to tell him what he thought of The Cigarette and the Weed, which is an interesting way to get hired for Ralph Bakshi, I guess. He watched The Cigarette and the Weed and he hated it, he thought it was horrible, and Ralph Bakshi wanted to give him a job to show him a lesson. And we know that it played at least in 2005, I could find through Animation Magazine, that it did play at kind of a special screening of Ralph Bakshi stuff, and it has apparently played at other places at various other film festivals and so forth. And that's it. It's listed on a lot of Lost Media stuff. There's plenty of Ralph Bakshi stuff, but this seems to be like mostly completely gone. And I'd actually researched this a while ago, and I never found much of an answer to it. And then when I was re-researching it to finally make this video, I actually found a piece of The Cigarette and the Weed, and it's crazy. This is weird. So, if you're aware of the film Halloween 3, there's a part in Halloween 3 where Tom Atkins is sitting down at a bar and he's watching an animated short, and then he asks them to change the channel because he doesn't like it, because he thinks it's really stupid and weird or something. And someone on Twitter asks Ralph Bakshi or whoever runs Ralph Bakshi's Twitter account, which apparently looks to be his family, according to one Twitter account called DC Pearson, who's an author and done various other things, actually added Ralph Bakshi and said, "Any insights, Bakshi family?" And then they responded with The Cigarette and the Weed smiley face. He's credited in the credits for Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. But this is the first confirmation we have had that The Cigarette and the Weed is anywhere. Now, apparently he did do a sequence for Cannonball Run 2. I don't know that because, one, I would have to watch Cannonball Run 2, and I don't really want to do that because I haven't seen 1 and I don't want to be lost, and it's like a whole thing. But he did do animated sequences for films at that time, and I'm curious if he either had this thing and they were like, hey, we need a cartoon to play on during this movie and either John Carpenter talked to Ralph Bakshi. I have no knowledge of them knowing each other, or if Tom Wallace did, who directed Halloween 3. And yeah, so that is the most of The Cigarette and the Weed we have ever gotten. It has screened at places. I have no knowledge of it screening anywhere recently. I know they've done Ralph Bakshi pieces at BAM, which is close to where I live, and other places, and maybe they've played it as a surprise in those, but I couldn't find very much information. It is only played in theaters, which is kind of interesting. If the idea that it is only supposed to have played in theaters is true, then I guess it actually has only done that. It has never gone on Vimeo or YouTube, or at least to my knowledge, and it isn't there now. Last Days of Coney Island, which you actually did have to pay for to watch originally, did actually become publicly available later. And I think it would be fun if The Cigarette and the Weed did come out. Now, maybe the quality of it is as bad as John K. says it is, and they just sort of don't want a big deal of a lost little cartoon that sort of sucks coming out, but it would be cool to see more content from Ralph Bakshi. But as of right now, the only way you can see The Cigarette and the Weed is to have seen or see Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. So if you've seen Halloween 3, you technically have seen as much of The Cigarette and the Weed as anyone has seen or will ever see. And since we got that confirmation semi-recently, we at least know that this is sort of found, but none of us really know what this short is, and we only really see the weed. We don't see the cigarette. It's also weird that this film's called The Cigarette and the Weed, and most of the things you get when you're searching for it is stuff about marijuana, which to my knowledge, even though I haven't seen this film has very little to do with. So yeah, it's a film that we don't really know the exact purpose of. It played in the weirdest Halloween sequel imaginable in one sequence with Tom Atkins not really even wanting to watch it on TV. But I would like to see it one day, and I hope it eventually becomes available, because it sounds like there is a print somewhere, and I feel like a lot of people would at least like to watch it. And it's short enough, it could probably even go on Instagram video or something like that. Not that you should do that, I'm just saying it's like really short, apparently. But I haven't seen it, so who knows? Because we have so little information on a film that's actually fairly recent. So that is what happened with The Cigarette and the Weed, and how it is insanely and unfortunately unavailable.
Hey, Charlie, can we have another station?
You got it.
So if you have any knowledge or any insight or anything to say about The Cigarette and the Weed or Ralph Bakshi or that period of Ralph Bakshi or the fact that I've found another way to talk about Halloween 3, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.